Hey guys, David Pingree here at Fox Raceway today, coming to you with a dialed in on the 2020 KTM 350. Super fun bike. We've been having a ball out here getting to know this thing today and trying to come up with a setting. And frankly, this is a pretty easy one for us. We didn't do a whole lot, and that's really good news. So you want to start out 10.4 bar is what they recommend on this fork, and 105 millimeters of sag. Those are kind of your starting point things before you even kickstart this thing or push the button these days. And that number could change, obviously, depending on your weight on the fork. But at 170 pounds, I found that to be really, really spot on. Some guys do prefer, if you're going to drop it like 0.2 bar up or down and just try it. But I would start with where they tell you to start because it's a really broad range, like a good, solid setting. So the compression on the top, the clicker, is 12. Out is the standard setting. 18 on the Rebound. And for me today, I didn't touch the compression, and we had a pretty good feel today. Good sections of like little chatter and braking bumps, and some hard pack and some soft. So I got a pretty good feel for it, and I didn't touch the compression. It was actually really good. If it was maybe a harder slick track, we were Glen Helen or somewhere like that, I might soften it a click or two and try that. But the only change I made to the front end of this thing is 2 clicks slower on the front. And I would recommend, if you pick up one of these, and that may even transfer over to 250 and 450, is slow down that front end. It's a little bit quick initially, and it makes it kind of busy. There's times where I was transitioning from left to right and kind of unloading it and reloading it with chatter, and it just kind of wanted to dance around a little bit. And by just 2 clicks of Rebound, slowing it down, that all went away. Totally quieted down the front end and gave me a much more planted, solid feel. So a very simple fix, and they said it's kind of a common theme that they've been finding with other test riders as well. So happy to hear I was kind of on track with that. As far as the shot goes, it was kind of the same situation. I had issues at times where if I caught a big braking bump, or especially if it was like a roller and then it bounced into a turn, it was kind of popping up in the back. And I said, I'm not sure. When you get a situation like that, a feel like that, it can be several things. It can be too fast to rebound. You can be too high with your sag. You can be too open with your high-speed compression. And so if you're too soft even, it can go into the stroke too far and then be popping back up. So I was having trouble kind of deciphering what condition I was getting, why I was getting that pop. They said, let's start with the Rebound. We did 2 clicks in. And the shock settings are 15, 15, and 2 turns out, standard, if you're not sure about that. So we went to 13 out on my Rebound, so 2 turns in, 2 clicks in, and it immediately fixed that problem. So I think that this bike is it's just valved a little bit quick, and maybe for certain applications that might be okay, but I think for a standard motocross track, if you slow it down 2 clicks front and rear, you're gonna feel like much more settled and planted, and like the bike is not as nervous. We set the sag at 105, and I didn't touch anything else. I left the compression clickers alone. Again, I may try softening just 2 clicks on compression on the low speed at a really hard slick track with a lot of chop, just to try that. But here today, I didn't need it, and I don't recommend getting too crazy unless you feel like you need it. This is a really, really good setup in stock trim if you just slow those Rebounds down. So go back to those stock settings, like I mentioned, 12 out on the fork, 18 out on the Rebound. That's standard setting, and then make the adjustment to 16. And then 15, 15, and two turns out, and then make the adjustment to 13 on the Rebound in the rear. So that got me balanced and really feeling good with the suspension. My next thing was to go through the maps. 1 is standard, 2 is aggressive, and I typically always like map 1 on the bigger bikes, and so I wasn't sure on this one where I would fall. The 250, I always like the aggressive map, and I found myself liking that here today again. Again, that standard map might be good for like more of a novice rider, just a little bit more friendly. 2 is just a little bit more aggressive, kind of comes on quicker and harder. But I think for any intermediate and an expert rider, you're gonna like that map 2. I would say though, no matter what, if you pick one of these up, start with map 1. Ride a few laps, get the feel of it, and then while you're out there, do a lap in map 1, and you can switch it on the fly just while you're going, reach over and hit it, and then try it in map 2 and get a feel for it. I played with the traction control. And out here today, pretty good traction, so it's kind of wasn't as noticeable as it is at other places. like we go to Glen Helen at the end of the day there, that's like a really nice Band-Aid that kind of helps you feel like a better rider, because when it wants to step out, it'll catch it and kind of hold you in line. So I really like that traction control feature, and I recommend getting used to it, getting comfortable with it, knowing when and where it works. But it is a really good feature. Today I didn't really use it much, but I stayed in map 2. So I think, like I said, beginner, novice riders, vet riders, maybe you like map 1 just because it's a little more mellow. And intermediate, advanced riders, you're going to like that map 2. They did go up a tooth on this rear sprocket. That's another change that was made. And I actually like the gearing the way it is. To me, it lets it pick up into those higher RPMs quicker, which is where this thing makes the meat of all its power. So for what it's worth, I like that. They also still have a short and a long throw cam for the throttle. And I always try to go to that short throw. Just makes it easier to get full wide open. Because the more you've got to turn and twist back and forth, you're just pumping your arm up more. So for me, I found like it's just, I was able to ride a little bit longer that way. Great brakes, no complaints about anything there. The seat's good. Again, it comes with this vented number plate. I would run this just about anywhere unless it's really dusty or really wet. I'd leave it on and run it. Again, I would always recommend, just to kind of get an idea of where your fork pressure is or spring rate, is take those little sliders they've got, or the rings they've got on the sliders, and bring them up every time you go out, and then check and see where they're at. If you're not using all the travel, I would play with going a little bit softer. For me today, I was down, I had maybe 3/4 of an inch left. So I thought that was pretty good. I'm using pretty much everything. But I've seen guys come in and there's, 2-3 inches of space at the bottom. I'm like, man, you gotta soften it up a little bit. You're not using all the stroke. So keep an eye on that just to make sure. No other issues with this bike. Nothing else I can even recommend. I asked if anyone was sliding the forks up or down. I didn't feel a need to. They said there are guys who will actually slide it up in the clamp. If you're looking for more high-speed stability, you can slide it down. And they've got nice hash marks that are, looks like 2 or 3 mil apart, so you can kind of gauge where you're going each time. But I don't think there's any need for that unless you're racing in a very specific type of high-speed off-road or really, really tight stuff. So anyway, great motorcycle. Those are the really basic starting points. I think you throw those in, you're going to love this bike. I had a blast riding this today. Thank you to KTM for having us out. And we'll see you guys in the next Dialed In video.